So thanks, everybody. It's always very heartwarming to see some people who are interested. The times are such that, most people are busy or tired or on the road in Delhi. So many millions seem to be on the road, trying desperately to get home and engage in some kind of relaxation. Anyway, we happy few, how wonderful that we can be here together and even have a view of Raghav's dinner plate or whatever it is, probably lunch, brunch. It's okay, so don't get distracted by our member from Miami who is enjoying his something. So yeah, start with the motivation, and one of those quotes from Milarepa that I love to keep on repeating. It's one of the few, of course, I've memorized, but it's very powerful if we take it to heart, where he says, toss to the winds your concern for this life and bring to your mind the unknown time of your death. Remembering the pain of samsara, why long for the unnecessary? Why long for the unnecessary? Okay, so what is unnecessary? Of course, this will vary from person to person if you ask them that question. For some people, wine and meat 3 times a day is necessary. For others, it may not be. For some, whatever, certain pay scale is necessary, not for others, and so on and so forth. From the point of view of the text we're studying, most of what we consider necessary is unnecessary. And in one way, in terms of our Dhamma practice, these teachings are telling us that all of the actions which we perform simply just for the happiness of this life alone, they are kind of there to be, suspicious of. They're kind of unnecessary. They create deep problems. And as we've been hearing, they are very clearly, according to these teachings, just propelling us into miserable situations again and again. Yeah. Okay. So those who wish can imagine that you are surrounded by your friends, your relations, your mother, your father, other sentient beings, human, animal, so forth. And they're all trying to find happiness, actually, and avoid suffering, whatever they are doing. And some of them think they're succeeding. What most worldly people consider pleasure or pleasurable activity is simply suffering of change. In the categorization of dukkha or suffering in the Buddhist tradition, ordinary samsaric pleasures are just another form of unsatisfactoriness, so they don't give final satisfaction. And we have to keep on repeating them, and they still don't bring final satisfaction. And they bring a lot of weariness and pain in the end. And anyway, in the end, we have to give them all up. So that can be very painful as well. So all of these beings, you see, your friends, your people you don't like, the people in your family, all these unknown people, they're all wanting the same thing, and tragically, they don't know how to achieve it. And as the great Bodhisattva Shantideva says, you know, it's like we're treating happiness as an enemy. It's like that. Because what we're doing is creating causes for pain out of ignorance. So how tragic that is, you know, to see someone, just imagine, okay, that you are a parent or you have a dear friend, and you see them again and again trying to find happiness, and you know what they're doing is just not helping them. You just know it's so temporary what they're striving after, you know? And you see how they keep on making mistakes again and again in how they're, you know, behaving, interacting, how they talk, and you feel so sad, right? Because they're your friend or your child or your partner, and you see how desperately they want to be happy, really desperately we want to be happy, and almost like non-stop creating causes for deep unhappiness, for all kinds of problems, and obscuring their minds with unwholesome karma, therefore creating long-term pain, which is really, if we investigate the teachings, they're talking of a kind of suffering and pain which is really beyond our capacity to understand right now, to certainly beyond our ability to accept, I would say. But those who have studied carefully, all of the Buddhist traditions, not just Gelugpa, all of them, all of the teachings by the great masters in the different, Buddhist schools, all talking about possibility of long-term suffering, misery after death, quite apart from during this life. Anyway, what's our point? Our point is how tragic that people we love and care for want to be happy. They have been very kind to us. Many of them have been so kind to us, you know, and also many of the unknown people so kind to us in ways that we don't even know of, because their work provides us with, you know, whatever we enjoy in life, the food, the clothing, etc., 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 the runways, the roads, everything. And, you know, they're just creating more causes, deep causes for unhappiness for themselves. What could be more tragic than that? You know, if you're a parent with an only child and you feel so proud and so much you care for that being, and what do? They just keep on creating causes for suffering through their, you know, uncontrolled behavior or whatever. You feel so sad. You really feel dreadful. You want to do something for that person, right? For your child. So this is the state of all sentient beings who are not yet firmly anchored on the spiritual path, and all beings are in this state without a guide, without proper discernment internally, not knowing what to accept, what to reject, not having that wisdom, having it, but not yet using it, one might say. We all have the potential, but deeply buried for many of us. So thinking in this way, maybe bringing to mind some people you know who are behaving, as we said, in this very ignorant way, just creating more and more pain for themselves. Maybe someone you really care for, you know, or you feel for. How wonderful if I could be of benefit to them, in some way. And how amazing to begin to develop the mind, the vast mind of a bodhisattva who joyfully engages with sentient beings in samsara, joyfully engages with them to help them in whatever way possible. How wonderful if one could even aspire to that state of mind. And think, especially if one has a teacher, a very kind, very awakened guru, how to repay the kindness of these extraordinary beings who have guided us and helped us and showed us the bodhisattva path in action. How to repay their kindness is to be of benefit to sentient beings, to develop the enlightened state of mind, to become a Buddha in order to benefit people without bias. So think death is definite, time of death is indefinite. Now that I have this precious, most precious human life, difficult to find and easily lost, easily lost, very difficult to obtain again in the future because of the very rare causes it has. So while I have this opportunity, I must do what I can. I must train my mind in the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, correct view of reality, emptiness. I must do as much of this as I can. And for that development of wisdom, I must also train my mind in the concentration, calm abiding practice, make my mind a fit instrument for traversing the path. Right now, it's like a very small candle flickering in a windy tunnel. Because what we need is a very powerful, powerful being, powerful wisdom being, powerful light, like a laser light, which can cut through ignorance. Let's spend some quiet time. You can reflect more on the motivation, or you can calm the mind with the breath awareness practice. Whatever is useful for you right now, you please do that. Bringing the mind back again and again to the topic, not letting it just wander away, recognizing when it wanders, gently bring it back. And as we sit together, allow your mind to relax, let your body be still, your mind be relaxed, but also attentive and vigilant. And let there be a sense also of togetherness and rejoicing that there is a community of people who are interested in these matters. That in our very, very busy, often very busy and somewhat distracting life, there is time to practice together. This is really something amazing. Very amazing, if you think about it. And when asked, I think, in one of the sutras from the Pali tradition, the Buddha is asked about the benefits of spiritual friendship, of the spiritual friends, and being involved in a community of practitioners. He's asked, is this, like half of the spiritual life or something like that? I don't remember the exact quote, but the Buddha's response is to the effect that no, it is a huge part. It's like a very vast part of the spiritual life is to have spiritual friendship, the support of like-minded people. As one teacher puts it, taking refuge in the Buddha, or even if you're not a Buddhist, it's like we're refugees in the sense that if we're serious about this, we are adrift from the ordinary way of looking at life. It's like we've set sail in a boat away from the shores of ordinary opinion and clinging to simply worldly affairs. So we're all like refugees. So refugees need to be united, you could say, otherwise there could be problems. So anyway, we can be happy and rejoiced if we can investigate together. Very good. So we'll continue where we left off with Rinpoche Tsongkhapa talking about mindfulness of death. And we were looking at the contemplation that the time of death is uncertain. First, of course, we looked at the fact that death is certain. And now we're looking at the fact time of death is uncertain. And later on, Tsongkhapa will make it very clear why we are looking, why this is such an important point. Okay, those who have the text, this is the translation. It's page 154 of the Great Treatise. This wonderful translation by a group of 16 Westerners who have translated this extraordinary spiritual treasure of the Tibetan tradition. Okay, which was completed in 1402. So over 620 years ago. And still totally appropriate. Very, very appropriate. So Tsongkhapa is arguing for the fact that if we don't remember death properly in the right way, then we will continue just living for the pleasures and the aims of this life alone. We'll not be thinking long term. So the exhortation is to again and again think that I can die today. I will die today. Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, late the late Lama Zopa Rinpoche, used to tell us, we should really think when we get up in the morning, I am going to die today, and see what effect that has on the mind in terms of what one then does during that day, with that thought. Of course, we might think, I'm going to die today, so I'd better go and see that film, that I missed. I'd better go and see the latest Shah Rukh Khan, box office success. But if one had another bent of mind, of course, one might think, well, okay, so what comes after death is the next life, and I'd better, do something today that helps me longer term than just today. I've got to take the provisions, mental provisions for the future, for my future life. Anyway, and how to develop an awareness of the imminence of our death? Tsongkhapa says that the first thing is that, so there are 3 points here. Remember, this is the ninefold meditation on death with 3 main points, and each point has 3 subpoints. So the first subpoint of the second main point, which is the death is uncertain, the time of death, the first thing to think about is that lifespan is uncertain. In this particular part of the universe, the lifespan is uncertain. If you look at certain texts, religious texts, different traditions, there are times when it is said, due to the collective karma or whatever being much better, there are very, very, very long lifespans. Highly unusual to die before living a very long life, but that is not the case now. In this part of the universe, at this point, there is no certainty, as Tsongkhapa says, whether death will occur in youth, in old age, or in between, And he quotes different texts from the Indian tradition, like the Udana Varga, a collection of indicative verses. Among the many beings that you see in the morning, some are not seen in the evening. And the many beings that you see in the evening, some will not be seen the next morning. So this is to show that there is no definite, there's nothing definite about that. Nothing definite at all. Yeah. Some are old, some are young adults. Everyone goes gradually, like ripe fruit falling. So we should, he says, be thinking over and over again that I too am subject to such a death. Death sometimes is of course entertainment. There's so many movies and serials where death is happening almost every minute, but we never think that person dying, Of course, for us it's entertainment. We don't think I'm going to die. This death is something that's going to happen to me. So this is the first point. The second point is that the causes of death are very many, and the causes of life are few. This may seem strange, but according to the spiritual traditions, there are many, many ways to die that we don't even know about, caused by unseen forces. Some, of course, we know. There are many dangerous animals. The imbalance of internal and external elements, whether it's in the term of external elements, earthquakes, floods, so on and so forth, or the imbalance of internal elements in the body when it becomes very strong, it can lead to death, because our body is a combination of the elements. When they're out of balance enough, we can die. You dwell among the causes of death, says the great Nagarjuna, like a butter lamp standing in a strong breeze. And again, something that Lama Zopa Rinpoche liked to quote a lot, part of it anyway, from Nagarjuna's very famous friendly letter text, said life is more important, more impermanent, rather, than a water bubble. battered by the winds of many dangers. Thus, that you can actually inhale after exhaling or awaken from sleep. These things are fantastic. Like Rinpoche would say, okay, you wake up in the morning, you should think, wow, I'm still breathing in and out. That's amazing. So many people died in the night in this world. Went to sleep and didn't get up. You know, the fact that I'm still breathing in and out, how amazing. Fantastic. Yeah. When the four elements, you see, are in a very balanced situation, then physical pleasure arises. But it's totally unsuitable to call pleasurable a collection that is in opposition. The point being that it's very easy for these internal elements to then not work well together due to pollution, wrong eating, wrong living, wrong thinking, etc., etc. All of those things disturb the internal balance of the body, and we feel literally a dis-ease, an unease. And if it gets bad enough, we can die. Yeah. Already, you see, 600 years ago, he's saying, you know, since the medicinal part of our food and such is weak, we have little resistance to disease. The provisions we do use aren't easy to digest, and thus we have diminished power for enhancing the body's great elements. Furthermore, since most of us have done very little to accumulate a lot of positive karma, and because unwholesomeness is strong, practices such as reciting mantra and so forth don't have much effect. So all of this, he says, makes it very difficult to really prolong our life. Of course, there are many advertisements here for medicines and things which are going to prolong our life. And yeah, to some extent, they may prolong our life, you know, briefly. But we're still racing towards death, and we don't know when it's going to happen. Furthermore, he makes this case, and I remember listening to this for the first time many years ago and finding it quite strange, but actually it's true. There are no causes of staying alive that cannot also become causes for death. In other words, you know, food and drink, shelter, friends help us not to die, you know. But even these, all these things can become causes of death. Yeah. You may consume wrong food and drink, or too much or too little. Your shelter could crumble, or your friends could deceive you or even harm you, you know, if they're angry enough. For some reason, your friend, so-called friend, can kill you, you know. So wind, water, earth, fire, all these things that help us in many ways to stay alive in the right combination and used in the right way, as we know, can also be causes of death. Yeah. Great hurricanes and typhoons, floods, yeah, earthquakes, and then fires. Incredible fires around the world, yeah. The ones that recently ripped through Hawaii at night, killing so many people, you know, and so forth. So all of these things, this wonderful element we use to cook our food in, you know, during the day on our chulas, gas chulas or whatever, it also can be a cause of death. All these things, even medicine, can be a cause of death. So, since life itself is headed towards death, anyway, the conditions for life would offer no security, even if they were numerous. Even if all these things worked, you know, even if all the advertisements were true, you know, we're still racing towards death. You know, even if we have a heart condition and we are lucky to find a great heart surgeon who, you know, gives us a new heart or something, or puts in the stents or whatever, and we add 20, 30 years to our life. Wonderful. But we're still racing towards death. Every moment we're getting closer to death. That is just the logic. Yeah. So this also should be contemplated. And the point of this, again quoting from the precious garland of, I think, Nagarjuna, isn't it? Ratnavali. Yeah. The causes of death are many. Those of staying alive are few. These two become causes of death. Thus, always practice the teachings. So you see, nothing like this kind of teaching, yeah, to torpedo our complacency, in the words of Dzongsa Rinpoche. He says the dharma is to torpedo our complacency, make us feel very, very unsettled and nervous in the beginning. It should really upset us. The dharma shouldn't be like a lullaby, putting us to sleep. It should wake us up. So this is, I think, one of those teachings that does that. We're so kind of just carrying on as though everything's going to be like this and not realizing that death is always there at our shoulder. In the shamanistic tradition, if you've read Carlos Castaneda and all these kind of books in the 70s and 80s, if you're old enough, for him, for the shamans that he met in New Mexico, Arizona and so forth, or in Mexico, for them, death, they always felt death was, they're always aware of death being very close, just over our shoulder. So that gave kind of urgency to their lives. Okay, third part here is that, so we've had the fact that in this world system, you can't tell how long you're going to live. We've had the section saying that the causes of death are many. And now we have the contemplation that the time of death is uncertain. Why? Because the body is so fragile. This body is so fragile, And that's true. Even if you have, kind of Superman kind of body, huge, the kind of bodies you see, the people coming out of the gym, or some of the superstars like to have these very, very powerful muscular bodies. But it's still fragile, like a water bubble. Doesn't take much damage to destroy it. Think how much damage. Doesn't take much. Tiny, you can't even see it. Some bacterial virus can kill the strongest of men or women, right? And your life could even be taken by something that you only imagine to be harmful, like being pricked by a thorn. Especially in the old days, 600 years ago, you get pricked by a thorn and it gets infested, it gets, becomes, infected, and then you die. We didn't have the antibiotics. They didn't have penicillin and all these things in those days. So a tiny prick, can destroy a life. I was reading about this virus that has killed 5 or 6 people in Kerala, Nipah or something, and how it's spread by fruit bats. So just a tiny amount of that on some dates or fruit or something like that, some saliva, and then it can be passed from human to human also. And you see, it's just so fragile. Everything is just so, what's the word I'm looking for? Everything is so uncertain. You may go to, I'm thinking right now of Horsecast Village, all these posh restaurants. And next to Horsecast Village, of course, is the Horsecast Lake, which is very beautiful. But there's one particular section where there's a huge tree, which is always covered with bats. They make a lot of noise and they flit around in the evening and so forth. So, in one of these posh restaurants, if a bat has some kind of virus and it somehow gets near the restaurant or the kitchen, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to die, His body is very fragile. So you're having your favorite food and a tiny blob of saliva from some bat and you're gone. You get sick and it has a very high death rate, Nipah, compared to COVID or anything. So anyway, it's like we're always, the body is so fragile. One has to accept that. However many, what is it? Is it 6 apps? One's supposed to have 6 apps. You're doing your crunches and this and that. And, people admiring your body. And then, you're down with a sickness which can even kill you. Friendly letter again of Nagarjuna says, if not even ash will remain when the physical world, earth, Mount Meru, and the seas are burned up by the 7 blazing suns. This is the way maybe Buddhist cosmology views how this earth system will end. Then if all this is going to happen, what need is there to mention humans, us who are so very frail? So after you've reflected in this way, says Tsongkhapa, you should resolve that since there's no certainty as to when the Lord of Death will destroy your body and life, then you will practice the teaching right now without assuming that you still have time. Make this pledge many times from the depths of your heart. It's not good for people to say, I'll put it off until tomorrow and do this other thing today. But tomorrow, when you are gone, will undoubtedly come. मतलब एक दिन आएगा जब कल नहीं आएगा. You'll be dead. Oof. And then Tsongkhapa quotes someone I never heard of, Sri Jagan Mitrananda, obviously an Indian yogi or pandit. He calls him a yogi, Lord of yogis. While this borrowed body is still healthy, without sickness or deterioration, take full advantage of it, acting now in order to end your fear of sickness, death, and deterioration. I mean, I guess he's saying the sickness, death, and deterioration is going to come at some point. So practice now so that when it does come, you won't fear it. You'll be ready for it. Because you are going to deteriorate and die. Once they come also, he says, what's the point of practicing then? You have to practice now, before they arrive. Whether you're a chess player or a warrior or whatever, high jumper, you practice everything first before you enter the competition, enter the war, with a chess match. You've done so much practice, you're ready. So as His Holiness Dalai Lama was asked once, what's your practice? What do you practice? Someone asked. And he said, all my practices are to prepare for death, which might have seemed very strange to the person who asked the question. But in one way, that's one way of looking at practice. It ensures a good death so one can have a good, perfect human life again and carry on with benefiting ourselves and others. Preparing for death. Then Tsongkhapa says something very powerful. He says the contemplation of the uncertainty of the time of death is the most important of these 3 root contemplations. This is the very thing that will redirect your mind. So work hard at it. The 3 roots, to remind you, is death is definite, time of death is indefinite or uncertain, and then the next point, which is coming, that only spiritual practice helps at the time of death. So he's saying this second point, that the time of death is uncertain. He's saying this is really the most important to remember. This is going to make us, hopefully, very urgent about practicing right now. Okay, now comes the third of the 3 roots, the contemplation that at the time of death, at the time when it's actually time to die, nothing helps us except religious practice. So first he talks about the things that are not going to help. Friends won't help. Of course, this is talking about ordinary people. Spiritual friends, of course, your Lama, if you have some well-qualified spiritual friends, they can actually help us at the time of death to some extent. by creating the right environment, reminding us of certain prayers or visualizations, helping us while we are still able, that is, or can hear them with certain practices. But in general, friends won't help. You know? Friends you went to the pub with or to parties with, they can't help much. The friends who are just upset, they can't help you. Of course, the point being made here is that you can't take any of them with you. That's the point Tsongkhapa makes. No matter how many loving and very worried relatives and friends are surrounding you, at that time you cannot even take one with you. One's reminded of the great pyramids and the graves of the great pharaohs, you know, kings of Egypt, how they packed their coffins and their tombs, their amazing tombs full of implements and items and even skeletons, it seems like, of slaves or whatever they had killed to journey with the pharaoh into their next life. But from Buddhist point of view, this is nonsense. It doesn't happen like that. You can't take anything with you except your mental your sanskars, your mental imprints from previous lives. So that is what you take with you. You can't take a single friend, can't take a single rupee of the billions one may have accumulated, all of that. So resources won't help. So here, no matter how many piles of beautiful jewels you have, you can't take even the slightest particle with you. You know, nowadays, so many interesting and also illegal ways of making money. You know, you can't take any of that with you. All of your hard-earned, you know, resources, all of the things we may have put so much energy into, buildings, properties, cars, accounts, this, that, and the other, you know. None of it, absolutely none of it goes with us, you know. You may be into ties or shoes, like Lady, what is it, Imelda Marcos in the Philippines, or whatever she had. Can't remember how many hundreds or thousand pairs of shoes. So,
700.
700 shoes. Okay, not much. Yeah. Okay, so 700 pairs of shoes. Can't take one tiny bit of leather or plastic or whatever from those shoes. You know? So it's like, we all know this, you know, but to think about it more, it's interesting, isn't it? How everything when we go home today, we touch or look at. Yeah, very interesting. Everything we touch and look at, can't take a single atom of it with us, including this much cherished body. Yeah, your body will not help. That's the third point. Friends won't help, resources won't help, body won't help at the time of death. In fact, body may be such a hindrance. Oh man, such a hindrance. When I think about how, yeah, mother a little bit, I can remember, father and uncles, body, such a hindrance, so much pain. Shocking in a way to even remember it. It's like, yeah, it's kind of shocking how much the body becomes a hindrance. Because I remember all these people when they were much younger, you see, all of these people, mother, father, uncles. I remember when, you know, I would be in their godi, in their arms, on their shoulder, you know, and then you see the body when it gets old and ready to die, man, it's yeah, it really hits home for a while. You know? When you oneself can pick up somebody who used to pick you up when you were a baby, and now you can pick them up because their body is wasting away and you know, not weighing much at all. So this body, imagine how much oil, makeup, and now all of these extraordinary things people have in their bathrooms, which I don't understand. All these different lotions and things you put on, and then things to help you take off what you put on your face and stuff. and all these things, all these ointments, massage oil. We've pampered this body again and again, tried to keep it going, wow. When I remember the amount of energy my own mother put into taking me to dentists, eye specialists, because I had problems with those parts of my body a lot. Wow. And then what's going to happen? Deteriorating still. And then one day they just give up on you. They just pack up. Bye-bye. Find another hotel. So it's like, yeah, this body is not going to help. It's not going to help. It is a very precious human body, no doubt, no doubt. But in this context, the time of death, for most of us, it's not helping. It's a hindrance. There's also a hindrance in the sense that we cling to it. We cling to a body. We grasp at a body. And that is one of the major propelling forces for rebirth in the samsaric body. We're grasping at a body. We want a body. Sometimes we can get attached to a hotel, yeah, in a couple of days. We like it so much. So we've been in this hotel of our body for, say you've been in it for 60, 70 years, you kind of get used to it, right? And you kind of love it. And you want it to continue. And you want another one. You might not want a 70-year-old one, but you want a young one again. You want a body. So we cling, we grasp. Tsongkhapa says, as you even have to discard the flesh and bones with which you were born, what need is there to mention anything else? Therefore, think, it will certainly come to pass that all the wonders of this world will leave me behind. I will leave them behind as well and go to some other world. In fact, this will happen today. So think about how at the time of death, only spiritual practice will serve as a refuge, a protection, a defense. So remembering the Guru, remembering compassion, love and compassion, so forth, bringing one's mind to those, or meditating on emptiness if one can. These are things which are going to help us when we die. Having compassion for your relatives who are left behind, having compassion for beings. If one is trained well, then even the pain we may be feeling as we die, one could utilize as a practice for taking on the pain of others and giving them whatever happiness we have. So it's obvious that just like in daily life situations where there is sometimes upset or anger or whatever, we see how useful the Dharma is if we remember it and practice it. So therefore, at the time of death, of course, this is going to be something that really helps. It's so obvious. If nothing else is going to help us, nothing else. You see, even if they give us very drugs to make the mind calmer and the pain less, then those drugs also interfere with clarity and are not the best way to die. By and large, not all. If there's excruciating pain, then of course it makes sense to have something to alleviate it. But you see, even the things we are given to make death more pleasant in that sense, or less painful, they can also be hindrances to having the kind of clarity which might be quite good to have. And then again, in the words of this yogi Jagan Mitrananda, whom Tsongkhapa quotes, he seems to be speaking to a king or someone. He says, Divine One, no matter what fortune you've gained, when you depart to another life, as though conquered by an enemy in the desert, you are alone without children or queen. Without friends, without clothing, without kingdom, without palace, Though you have limitless power and armies, you will not see or hear them. Eventually, not even one being or thing will follow after you. In brief, if you lack even a name, what need is there to speak about anything else? Then Tsongkhapa says this, which is worth reflecting on. Try to achieve lasting happiness for your next life and beyond by being mindful of death in this way, reflecting on how the precious human life, leisure, and opportunity are very important, difficult to obtain, easily lost, despite being difficult to obtain. Instead, if instead you are seeking only to find happiness and to avoid suffering up until your death, then you are going to need a course of conduct which surpasses animal behavior, since animals are better than humans at temporal happiness. Otherwise, even though you have obtained a life in a happy realm, it will be just as though you had not. Shantideva says, those who are tortured by bad karma waste their wonderful leisure and opportunity so hard to gain, just in order to acquire some trifling thing, some petty thing, which is not so rare, and which even animals may attain. So food, shelter, partner, in a sense, children, food. These teachings are saying even animals know how to get these things. So we must do better than that. And then he says, therefore, although it is quite hard to produce this mindfulness of death, you must work at it because it is the foundation of the path. You must work at it because it's the foundation of the path. Sometimes we say relying on the guru properly is the foundation of the path. So what is the foundation of the path? Well, there are several foundations of the path, one might say. We don't need to quibble about this. It's important for many to have a guru at the beginning as a foundation. But again, you must keep in mind what Dalai Lama ji had said to somebody, that in the beginning you mustn't run after a guru like a dog running after meat. You should, your own intelligence and authentic literature are is your guide, is your guru in the beginning, So like that. That's the foundation, obviously. And then to realize how precious our opportunity is, obviously that's a powerful foundation. If we don't think much of our human life, if we think we're just a kind of blob of meat walking around on the face of the planet, then, think we're just, a selfish bunch of selfish genes, then, of course, life doesn't have that much meaning. But if we have this understanding of the precious human life, that's a foundation. And this meditation on death is a very, very, very powerful foundation, if we were really to get it, because it shows us how really we don't have much time at all. And even if we do have 100 years, at the end of it, we're going to die, and what's going to be the state of our mind? So traditionally, to attain this level of realization, to go deeply and have our mind be actually tamed and transformed by these meditations, so far in the Lamrim, the reliance on the Guru, awareness of the precious human life, and then this mindfulness of death, to really be able to appreciate them and realize them deeply, one has to accumulate collection of positive energy through practices like giving and rejoicing and all of that, serving one's guru if one has one, serving beings, sentient beings. One has to do that. One has to purify the mistakes, the obscurations of the mind through confessional purification practices, love, compassion, meditation on emptiness. There's certain purification practices of prostration, mantra, and so forth with the proper motivation. And then for those who do have a guru or an Ishta Devta, which in the Buddhist sense would be a particular personal Buddha deity, we call it, then one makes strong prayers to that being as well. So accumulating positive energy, purifying obscurations and negative karma, and then making strong supplications to the Guru. These are the traditional ways to prepare the mind, moisten the mind so that it is like a good field, a very well prepared field where the seeds you plant, excuse me, will grow properly. So we're trying to plant the seed right here, the mindfulness of death properly. Of course, if we throw it on concrete, it's not going to grow. However healthy the seed. So we have to prepare our mind, and so this is the way. And of course, the basic instructions to have a kind heart, a good, kind attitude, and not taking appearances too seriously, realizing that appearances are deceptive, that the reality is somewhat other than just the appearance. Just having this kind of attitude and understanding as much as we can and practicing is also, of course, a very good foundation. It's a part of, if we were to do that, constantly remember kindness and compassion, that in itself would go quite a long way in purifying the mind and making it a fertile soil for spiritual realization. Somebody asked the great Lama about whether they should change the object of their meditation now. They've been meditating on death. And he said, they asked the Lama, what comes next? And he said, there's nothing more. There's nothing more. For that person at that point, it seemed nothing more. Just focus on this meditation. This is the one to master. So meditate again and again, Tsongkhapa says, until you have turned your mind away from just the activities of this life. Because the activities of this life are just like, adorning yourself, beautifying yourself, while you're being led to the execution ground. So, you see goats tied up, at least you do in Bodh Gaya, unfortunately, not far from the holy temple, actually, just waiting to be, their heads to be cut off. And human beings, we're also just lining up, really, in one way to die. So if we were only concerned with beautifying ourselves and adorning ourselves with whatever we adorn ourselves with, whether it's, makeup or, I don't know, the latest Maserati or whatever the latest wonderful Indian car is, we're just adorning our bodies and are gaining more possessions, then that's kind of weird, since we're in the lineup, for the Lord of Death. Yeah. Tsongkhapa ends this chapter by saying, no matter where the teachings of reliance on a teacher, leisure, and opportunity, and impermanence, wherever they may occur in the Buddha's word and its commentaries, recognize they are meant to be practiced and sustain them in meditation. If you do so, you will easily find out what the Buddha really meant, the intent of the conqueror. Understand that you must proceed in this way in the context of the other teachings as well. I think that last line means that, again, whatever we listen to in this text, they're meant to be practiced and sustained in meditation, and not just to be something we can quote and show off our, how much we know about this great text. So they need to be practiced. And they're so clear, aren't they? Although it's quite hard, when I say they, I mean the great masters of the past. Although it's quite hard to produce this mindfulness of death, you must work at it because it's the foundation of the path. There's absolutely I don't think there's any ambivalence there, is there? You just have to work hard. That's what they're saying. No shortcut. I remember the very, very first teaching I took on this kind of path, the 5-day course I took. In England, I was only, I was 21, 22, 21. And there were, I don't know, 15 people from this course with Tibetan geshe who didn't speak very good English, but was very charming and very interesting for us, who got across as much as he could. And luckily, there was a Western nun who was helping us with understanding some of the things we didn't understand. Anyway, he was asked by one of the people towards the end of the course, this is difficult. I'm finding it hard to understand and what you're saying. This is a 5-day course. It wasn't very long. I think 5 days, 6 days, yeah. And his answer was, yeah, of course. You have to practice. You have to practice again and again. Yeah. I don't think it's the answer that person wanted to hear. I remember that person very clearly. He later became a monk and had quite a high position in the organization. We want a quick way. The Lama said, yeah, you have to work hard at it. Again and again, you have to put effort. So listening, meditating, and, listening, reflecting, meditating. So in the notes, hello. Alex Napoli says that his son just fell off his bicycle. Well, I hope your son's okay now. Okay. So what else? Any comments? Anything from people here? Tushita? Come closer, ma'am. You don't hide in the shadows. You can't hide. And you might want to speak loudly so people online can hear you, although I will repeat it. But I.
So, Venerable Robina once came, she taught on death.
Yes.
So she gave a wonderful method about there are 3 things that you have to be mindful of, that death is certain, time is uncertain, and what is. What death happens, like death is certain. She said that a wonderful method is that you see ants on the road dying, or you see leaves fallen out of tree, flowers, things like that. That could be a reminder that this will happen to you.
Yeah. So Mayank Bhai, who has emerged from the shadows into the front line, he says that Venerable Robina gave a teaching on death. And as per the first point, that death is certain, she said that, if you see an ant dying in the road or a leaf falling from a tree, all of these things can be a reminder of our death. Anything else?
Is there a similar method for reminder for the second point, that death is the time is uncertain?
I would say so. I gave some. Maybe you weren't here that time.
am.
Well, if you are one of these poor people in Hawaii, or these poor, to bring really up to date, the dam burst in Libya, and then also what else happened in Libya? What was it? 2 things happened. Earthquake. Earthquake in Morocco, and the dam burst in Libya. Those people washed away at night by dams bursting. And of course, remember, dam is also there to help us, supposedly to help us with irrigate, water for life, and because of the, whatever, raw, it was getting old, it wasn't being repaired, and all these houses in the way. So then you are washed away at night, and all these bodies are ending up in the Mediterranean Sea now. And that's on the one hand. The other hand, thousands dying in the earthquake. So I don't think you need many more reminders. And of course, also, what would be an example close at home? Well, these train accidents we have. You're, peacefully having your dinner or sleeping in maybe even AC, dibba, and next thing, you're dying, dead, as you hurtle off the tracks at 100 kilometers an hour, whatever. And death will become even faster when we have bullet trains, So it's like all these things. I mean, so many. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Have you seen someone die in front of you? A human. Have you seen an animal die in front of you, apart from an ant? If not, then yeah, it's maybe tricky. But then you can watch videos, I guess, of these things now. Because people like to take videos of things happening. Also, there's some horrible footage, of course, historical footage from Second World War and others of people being shot. But yeah, I think there's plenty of examples around. You must have known some people who died during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So there you are. I mean, one of my best friends died like that. One day he was just telling us on WhatsApp that he's sick with COVID, and then 2-3 weeks later he's dead. Last thing he says to me, it was his birthday, and I couldn't go, didn't go, whatever. And he was saying on the phone, "Arey, Aja, yaar, Aja." Few weeks he's dead. Dear friend. So I think we have plenty of examples of people dying, Have any of your family members died? Uncles or aunts or extended? And it was, on the news a little bit of a surprise. You didn't expect it. So what other examples do you need? That time of death is uncertain. And Rinpoche, in his book Door to Satisfaction, gives an example of someone who's giving a speech, I think in South Africa. And in his speech, he was saying how, death is uncertain, and then actually he collapsed. He was eating some cough sweet or something. He choked and he died there and then, while he was giving a talk, and at that moment on how death can come anytime, and then he dies. So I mean, talk about coincidence and how one can die anytime. Trying to think of something else. Yeah, I mean, so many examples, isn't it? I'm sure we all can think of something. I mean, if we're a certain age, of course, then our parents have died. A parent has died, usually. Grandparents have died. My grandfather, Scottish grandfather, always expected his grandmother to die for him. He thought he himself would die first. His whole life was kind of based on that. After a certain age, I will die first. Who will look after grandma? Who will look after her? And we get this phone call. We were living in South London at that time. Grandma's dead. Because he'd come home from shopping, grandfather, and we had a hallway in North London, and there was a chair at the end of the hall as you enter the house. Grandma slumped in the chair, dead. Granddad never got over it. Totally a bombshell for him. Never got over it. Then he also then died within 2-3 years. So for him, it's like, and then for us also. I remember my mother on the phone reacting to the news. It's like, yeah. It's usually a kind of unexpected. Unless someone has been really sick and on the ICU or ventilator, and then it can come as a shock, but it's not so much of a surprise, usually. Maybe it's death can be something a bit shocking for children. Some children, their pet animal dies or something, and it's a bit much for them. That they don't quite understand also something. But for us, I think plenty of examples. Plus, we also have examples of how only Dharma helps at the time of death. Because if we read some of the amazing, inspiring stories of great beings dying, not just Buddhist tradition, different tradition, then that's very inspiring. And then it's obvious that the spiritual practice of those people, those beings, has been, for them, death is to be welcomed. Like, carry on with their work, or they meet God or whatever. So, like have you read Tibetan Book of Living and Dying? So in that, all these inspiring stories of how these great lamas died. So that's something that can inspire us and sustain us to meet death without any fear whatsoever, and to actually transform it into a path where one then has the ability to help others again and again. What else? Then, of course, there's some people who have near-death experiences. And that can change those people. Can, if they get close enough to death. I mean, I know some people who've survived air mishaps and almost killed by a car on the road, but because they didn't go into the death experience at all, one wouldn't call it a near-death experience in that sense. And the event didn't seem to transform their lives much or make them appreciate it that much more. But I think if one were to go into the near-death experience where one begins to go through the stages of death, but then for whatever reason, a karmic, one doesn't die, for those people often that's very powerful. So, anything? Yash? Any comment? Do you agree with what Tsongkhapa is saying? Yeah? Do you disagree? Anything you disagree with, then it's important. It's important to disagree. And sometimes. Does it seem morbid? What is death, death, death? Good point. Someone is bringing up the point that isn't it in contradiction with the teachings on mindfulness, which say you have to be mindful of this present moment and not be worried about what's going to happen in the future and so forth. So how do we answer that? A good point. Almost a googly. We are prepared for such questions, but it's a very good question. I think there's something there one has to reflect on balance of things. If one has studied a bit more, then one appreciates what Buddha is saying about this life, death, and future lives, and how we behave now is going to affect the future. Of course, if by practicing mindfulness in the here and now, it leads to that person really behaving in an extremely ethical and wise and kind way, then of course, wonderful. But if mindfulness just means you're, just totally mindful of how you're getting up, moving and walking, and just doing it in a very kind of introverted way, so there's not much moisture in it of love and compassion, and you're not actually getting to grips with the deeper nature of reality, which comes through sustained deep meditation, then from Buddhist perspective, you're not creating the cause for either nirvana or enlightenment. You may be creating the cause for just a reasonable human next life, which of course is also good. Of course it is. But I don't know. How would you answer, how would some of the older students who want to, how would they answer that question? Or Venerable Kundral, how would you answer that question? Why isn't, or is just mindfulness of what's happening in the here and now, isn't that enough? Why worry about death and all this, analytical practice, analytical, work on death? What would you say? As a fully card-carrying Tibetan Buddhist monk living in Bodh Gaya, what will you say? You'll have to unmute yourself. Oh, hold on. I'll have to first give you the opportunity. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you wish.
Hello.
Hi. Just do it once more.
I'm certainly not an expert, but
Don't worry, no one's an expert here.
the time of death is, from what I've studied and heard, is just extremely important of how your mindset, how your mindset is set at that particular moment.
Yes. So people might argue, if one is mindful, if one practices mindfulness every day, won't that ensure that we are mindful and sort of in a good way, in a good state at the time of death?
Certainly. Yes.
So why all this, death is definite, time of death indefinite?
Well, from my beginning way, what I'm finding out is that it really hits me of, okay, I'm not going to take a 2-hour nap. I'll only take an hour nap.
No, that's a good one. Yeah.
Or something like that. It just really makes you focus that you could die at any moment, and so you have to gravel with your mind of what you're going to do next.
Yeah. Also, maybe if one does reflect on time of death being indefinite, maybe one's mindfulness practice will improve, I mean, one practice harder. And then I don't think the teachings are saying you can't look ahead. Teachings are saying be aware of reality. The reality is we die. According to Buddha, the reality is there is rebirth. Or let's put it this way, there's continuity of consciousness. Because mind does not end. So how about that? Buddha claims he can see different realms that is possible to experience with the mind, with consciousness. So some are incredibly unpleasant and painful, and they have causes, just as the happy realms have causes. So Don't we want to create those causes, very powerfully? And don't we want to be aware that we might not have much time to create those causes because death can come anytime? So I think we have to reflect on these things in a balanced way and not take any teaching. If we're just someone who is being very mindful, it can actually be extremely irritating to be with people who are that mindful because they kind of work in slow motion. They can be working in really slow motion, slower than, you can slow something down to, 0.5, 0.25 or something. It's too slow. When you want to meaningfully interact with someone, it's like you feel almost, with some people, you might be talking to a kind of zombie, or someone who's drunk too much because they're doing everything so mindfully and slowly. It just gets exaggerated. And then mindfulness, no study necessary becomes the motto. And that's not the way we look at it in the Nalanda tradition. That's not the Nalanda tradition of India. So the people who are now extolling mindfulness as kind of 90-95% of the path or more, that is not in consonance with the Buddha's teachings, according to the Nalanda tradition and the Tibetans who have kept that tradition alive. Mindfulness is essential, but it is not everything. Or it's not everything in the way that it is taught. We have to be mindful of death. Yeah, we're speaking mindfulness. We have to be mindful of death right now. And one of the ways to be mindful of death is to remember that it could happen anytime. So that is a mindfulness in the present moment. I'm mindful right now. I can make myself mindful right now that before reaching Chorminar and home, I usually walk back slowly with a jirji. Before I get home, one of us may be dead. We cannot guarantee that we won't be. So there's that mindfulness, which is happening now. So I don't think there's any great contradiction. In olden times, says Mr. Chaudhary, elderly people in villages could perceive the death in advance. My mother, 3 years back, she was 87 years old, asked me to read the Gita, and in half an hour she had passed away. What makes people perceive death in advance? Well, if one had certain degrees of clairvoyance, one could, of course, see it through spiritual practice. One could actually have very clear clairvoyance. But I agree. It's amazing. I also some stories in our family like this about some elderly member who would call people together and say, look, I'm going to die very soon. I'm not sure if it was they actually pointed out the day, but they said, I'm going to die very soon. Blah, blah, blah. This needs to happen or whatever. So, yeah, very good. I think the more ethical and pure people are, and also we would say due to sanskars and so forth from previous lives, some people can do this. It doesn't mean they have pure clairvoyance, but it means some things can be clear to them. So that's interesting. And wonderful for your mother. If for her the Gita was something very important and useful, then wonderful to hear it just before she died. Yeah. Thank you, Chaudhary. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. We'll stop now. Enough food for thought, I'm sure. And we mustn't take this as something to be depressed about. The whole point is that we practice now, and we practice strongly, purely. That's the whole point of these 3 root points of this meditation. Yeah, so it's not a cause for, in one way you could say it's a cause for rejoicing, because it's like taking some, medicine that doesn't taste good at all, but you're happy because you trust the doctor, you trust the doctor who gave you the medicine, and you trust, that the medicine is going to work. So it's a bit like that. It doesn't taste very nice, this particular medicine, but by Jove, it works. It's worked for many people in the past, and it can work for us. So there's that sense that, yeah, okay, I'll put up with the bitter taste for now, no problem. Okay, so before I forget, one of the people we are dedicating for is our dear friend Pradeep Magazine's mother-in-law, Chandra Prabha. He asked us to dedicate for Chandra Prabha. His mother-in-law is presumably old and sick. I think back in hospital, he said. So please dedicate for her. Dedicate for anyone you know who is sick or ill or lonely or unhappy or doesn't have any guide. May they find what they need, to be well and happy. Those who passed away, may they find precious human rebirths. May we never be separated from authentic teachings and teachers, life to life. May we never be separated from all the facilities we need to engage in the Dharma, and may we always be enthused to practice the wisdom arising from listening, wisdom arising from reflecting, and the wisdom arising from meditation. May we have the courage and the perseverance that the practitioners of the past had, and which the great practitioners of today also have. May we have that and not be discouraged. May we have patience to practice the Dharma. This is one of the different kinds of patience. One is the patience to be able to practice the Dharma. May His Holiness Dalai Lama, all the other great masters have long and healthy lives, and may all their wishes be fulfilled. May all the sanghas, all the students, all the helpers, and all the centers be well and happy. All their Dharma wishes be fulfilled. Now we dedicate for all those who have died suddenly in disasters in Morocco and Libya, and all the other parts of the world where war is still happening, so forth. We could pray with Shantideva that, beings start thinking of benefiting one another rather than always fighting with each other. May people with influence and power see more and more the need to work to heal the environment rather than to aggravate it even more, even if that means a change in lifestyle and losing votes in elections. May we put the health of the planet and the beings first. Spend a moment with your own dedications, your private dedications. Janjo Samjo Rimboche, Magya Panam Gekiraj, Yabo Nyamba Meba Yon, Kone Kondo Balvarasho, Gangri Dawe Korwe Jingam De, Pendan Dewa Malu Jungwene, Chere Ziwan Benzing Yabdo Yi, Yobe zipe bardo thank you. Prayers for development of bodhicitta, great compassion, and long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And may the reincarnation of Kyabje Lama's Rinpoche quickly appear and guide us as Rinpoche guided us unstintingly for so many years in his last life, guiding thousands of students onto the path to enlightenment. So, and may we all have good connection with the reincarnation. Okay, thank you all very much. Very kind of you, all of you. Might see some of you on what's today, Thursday. Actually, Sunday morning we have a venerable nun, Venerable Dasel, who will be giving a 3-hour morning session. So please, those who can, join in with that. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna tell you Venerable Dasel will be talking on, it'll be a day of Dharma practice. Each day, a day of Dharma practice is the title of this 3-hour session, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sunday the 17th, here at Tushita in person, and it'll also be on Zoom. She's spiritual director of Ashigatsa Ling. Anyway, yeah, looks like one should really please come to that teaching or attend it online. Yeah. She'll be offering training in calm abiding and analytical meditation to increase the power of our awareness, strengthen our good heart. Also be discussion on the 4 immeasurable thoughts and ways to empower our motivation to embrace everything as part of our journey of waking up. She was ordained by His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 2017. Good. Good. Thank you, everyone. Nandita, Maria, Alexis, Jackie, Isabel, Yash, the other Yash, Chaudhry Saab, Venerable Kundro. Take care and see you all again soon.